everybody. Welcome back to the Show and Tell show. It is another week of dragging stuff out of our collection storage for everybody to see. And that's actually kind of the theme. We challenged Penetanguishene Centennial Museum, Jan and Nicole sitting over there. Hey, guys.
Hi.
There's lots of things that we bring into our collection that are really important. They help tell the story. But, you know, sometimes it isn't enough to put on the floor because it's not enough to build an entire exhibit around. But I know what we're showing off this week, we have lots of people who love this and are interested in it. And you drag this out a lot. This
map, yeah.
Yeah, Genevieve drags this out a lot for special requests, people doing research. And it's those kind of artifacts that it's important that we hold, even though you might not see it on the floor. You can always come in and ask us if we have anything that pertains to that, and maybe we do in the back. We got a lot of stuff. We have a lot of stuff. So this is one of those things. This is one of those things from the stuff. So Genevieve, what do we got?
Okay, well, the thing that I have is not actually the map. The map goes with this, but what I did not drag out is this. This is a photograph of a mangle. This is a household mangle, but what we have is an industrial mangle. And this mangle was used to iron clothing. It originally belonged to a fella who owned a Chinese laundry in town. His name was Su Sing. It probably dates to about 1930. Then in 1935, he sold it to the wife of W.J. Bowman, who owned a butcher shop in town, and she brought it home and she used it when she laundered the aprons for the butcher shop. She would iron or mangle. She would pull, I guess, move the aprons through their two rollers, and using heat, they actually iron or flatten the piece of fabric. So she would iron the aprons for the shop so the men look nice and presentable. But what I'm going to talk about is actually not the mangle itself, but the history, I guess, of Chinese people in Midland. I have a photograph here. This one dates to about 1901 to 1903. There's road work going on King Street. And you can see here, this white building at the corner of King Street and Hugo Avenue was a Chinese laundry. It says Best Laundry, Li Qi. Later on, this is the map that I'll bring out, this exciting map. Here's King Street right here. Bay Street is down here. Then we have Dominion and Hugo. Over here at the corner of Hugo Avenue, we've got the Chinese laundry. That's Li Qi's right there. But just further up a little bit, this was the Gladstone House. Later on, it became the Georgian Hotel. We've got another Chinese laundry. That one was owned by Su Sing, who owned that industrial mangle. And I've got a photograph, a postcard, a very small postcard of it. All right, here, you can't see. This is the Georgian Hotel right here. And just at the edge of the picture, we've got Su Sing's laundry. Interestingly, it was right beside the Grand Cafe, and the Grand Cafe was owned by another man by the name of Sam Lee. Su Sing also owned a laundry further down the street beside what we call, I guess, the Crow's Nest, or until really recently was the Crow's Nest on King Street, and that was Jeffrey's Hardware when Su Sing's laundry was there. But it seems that there were a lot, although we had a number of Chinese families, or Chinese men rather, in Canada in the early, I guess it was 1885, a head tax was imposed on all Chinese immigrants. And that was the only time that Canada ever imposed a head tax on any kind of immigrant to the country. In 1885, it was $100 per person to get into the country. or $50, sorry. 1900, it became, I think, 100. And then in 1903, it increased way up to $500 per person. And that's why you see, although we did have a number of Chinese immigrants in town, all of them were men. All of them were men who were either a very, very small number of them. I'd say maybe 10% of them were single men. The remainder were married men, and their families, or at least their wives, were still back in China. And what I don't know is whether those wives were eventually able to immigrate. Interestingly, although it seems that we did have a small, anyway, Chinese population by about 1901, I can't find any evidence of them in Midland in census records until 1921, when there were about 5 different households, I guess, of all Chinese men living on King Street, and all of them were employed in either laundries or restaurants. There was also a Chinese laundry in Penetanguishene, I know, in 1911 at least. And in Port McNicoll in 1921, there were at least 5 households of Chinese people. All of them were single men or married men, with the exception of one family who had come from British Columbia, and they ran a boarding house in Port McNicoll. And the remainder of the men, it seemed, in Port McNicoll were working for the CPR as cooks and chefs in boarding houses. So unfortunately, we don't really know much about these families, although there seemed to be a lot of racist policies in Canada at the time. I do not find any mention of any of the Chinese men or the woman who lived in this area. There's no mention of Chinese people or the laundries or the restaurants, with the exception of one advertisement that I could find in a 1914 newspaper. And it wasn't even an advertisement for the laundry itself. It was really an advertisement for a man who was a weaver. And he mentioned that his shop was across King Street from the Chinese laundry, the Chinese steam laundry. So yeah, if you know anything else about the Chinese population in the early 20th century in Huronia, please get in touch with me. I'd love to hear about it. Thanks.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's
Very good. How often did you run into the name Su Sing?
I actually found 3 instances of it. They were all, I did not find Su Sing in any census records here in Midland, but there were 3 men named Su Sing, all of different ages, living in Aurelia at the time. And again, they were all working in restaurants and laundries.
Yeah.
So,
wow. Yeah, I know that was a big
$500 head tax. That's a lot of money. $500.
Yeah, the government made millions off it.
Yeah.
And when did they get rid of the head tax?
I do not know. I'm not entirely sure, but actually 2 years after 1923, there was actually, they cut, I don't know if there was a Chinese Immigration Act. I'm not sure if it limited severely or if it cut off the immigration of Chinese men to Canada. But it was pretty terrible racist policy, certainly for, I mean, a really hardworking group. Thankfully, we don't do that today.
Thankfully.
Can you identify for me what corner at Hugo and King? Is that where the grocery store is now?
No, it was the northwest corner of Hugo and King.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it'd be where Shop Midland is now.
Yeah.
That's
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
From the grocery store now, on the other side of the street, on the east side of the street, was the Su Sing's laundry.
Okay. Thanks.
And we were aware of a laundry here in Penetanguishene, but yes, we also do not have a lot of information. And I can't even remember the name of the gentleman that ran that laundry. I think the last name was Lee, but maybe not. I know it wasn't Su Sing.
Not sure.
No,
yeah, I know we talk about. I know we talk about him. It was in the Beck block, And there was another one up where the taxi stand is now, because the church used to complain because when they let out the water, it was flooding down into All Saints property.
Okay.
But there was also one in the Beck block too.
Oh.
Yeah.
I believe there was one inside the Georgian Hotel on the corner of
Yes.
Robert
Yeah.
and Main, which is where the gas station is.
Yeah. So that would be 3.
Huh.
Wow.
Yeah, they were unnecessary. I think they sort of made their way, or they found a niche and kind of exploited that, and that's why you find so many of them opening restaurants,
Right.
and laundries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Very good. What do you have over at Penetanguishene? Because what do you have over there? What's your artifact this week?
So our artifact, I guess, you know, we said something that we don't really use. We try to like use a lot of our artifacts that are in our collection at some point into different exhibits, but sometimes you collect certain artifacts that maybe you're thinking, okay, in the future I am going to make an exhibit and put this in there, but it hasn't quite happened yet. So that's what I thought with this object, because it's a little odd. But what I have here, just a piece of a wall, and it does have some wallpaper on it. There, very, very old wallpaper. It's almost Romanesque.
That's cool. What is it again? Oh, we're missing sound. Okay, that's neat looking.
I can hear you.
Can you guys hear me? So there we've got some wallpaper. So this came from the inside of a home in Penetanguishene. That is the oldest home that's still standing. So it is from 12 Water Street. So this picture here was taken back in the early 1900s. So when the homeowners there purchased this home, they did some massive renovations of the George Gordon home, and this is what they found. And so when those homeowners ended up selling that home about a couple of years ago, they donated it to us because they knew how it would be important to tell the history of story of the George Gordon home. So the George Gordon home was built in 1828.
Wow.
So it is the oldest home in Penetanguishene for sure. And I say the oldest in Simcoe County. If someone can give me a house that's older, I would love to hear about an older home. I've been kind of saying this for a year now. I'm just putting it out there. It's the oldest home still standing in Simcoe County that's still on its original site. And it does not look like this anymore. It's at 12 Water Street, so you can drive by. I tried to find a photo of it online, but it has changed over the years as well. It is a heritage home, but the heritage components of it are not on the outside. The heritage components of it are for the inside and the stone fireplace that was there, because they actually use some of the mason work from the Discovery, like the military and naval establishments, to work on the fireplace there. But this home was owned by George Gordon. He was from Drummond Island. So that's one of the original group that settled in our area. But he actually came here a couple years before the Drummond Islanders did. They came here in 1828-29, and George Gordon came to this area in 1825. And he originally settled out on the point that we now call Gordon's Point. And the reason it's called Gordon's Point is because he's the first man to come to Penetanguishene shore to settle and to live here. Not first man, first settler.
Yeah.
Settle in the area. And when he was at that spot, he did supposedly grow or plant some apples. So there's an apple orchard out there. They say it was planted by George Gordon. He settled there for years. I guess the rough weather out where Gordon's Point is out right like close to where the military establishments is, like Discovery Harbor. And so he came into town when the Drummond Islanders started to settle, and he built a home right on Water Street, because that was our main street at the time. And right beside him was Didine Revol, and they helped each other to build their homes. So there is always an argument, which home was the first home, like actual log cabin home built in Penetangmachine. And it could either be Revol's or Gordon's, because they built them together, but George Gordon's is one that's still standing today. Yes. And the other one didn't. So yeah, so it was built then. He was a fur trader, and he did marry an Indigenous woman. And so some of their family members are now part of the Métis community that we have here in the area. Yeah. And that's his home, and that's sort of an artifact from that home that we were lucky to receive.
Oh, very, very cool. I think this is one of my favorite episodes. Like, this is one of my, like, this is like artifact deep dive. I love it. Yeah. I love it. I love what we're learning today. So what's our challenge for next week? You got something ready?
Yes, we do. And so we're thinking about the fall is definitely here, even though we've had that warmer weather, but it's certainly getting darker earlier at night. Yeah. Things are getting a little more, the wind whips up and things get a little more creepy and spooky. So we're going to dig into our collection and look for something that when visitors see it, think maybe it's a little creepy, a little spooky. Let's see what we can find.
Creepy looking in your collection.
Creepy stuff from our collection. Okay, I think we can do that. Yeah, we can do that. Okay. All right. So creepy stuff next week. I'm excited for that one too. This was an awesome episode. I had a ton of fun. We'll see everybody next week, same time, same channel.
Bye. Okay. Bye. Bye.